Friends, at this time we are going to begin services for Charles M. Cohn. I'd ask you to take a moment now to take your seats, and if you do have a cell phone or any other noise-making device, if you would take a moment now to please turn it off or place it in the silent mode. Officiating our services today is Cantor Susan Lewis Friedman from Temple Jeremiah. She will begin our services today with the ancient tradition of Kriya.
This week, we read from the book of Exodus in Parshat Bo, which outlines one of the most famous stories shared amongst families. This is the story of God instructing Moses to have the courage to go to the Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go." And truly, my main takeaway from our meeting yesterday with this beloved family was that Charles will be remembered most for his endless love and his dedication to his family. And how fitting today it is that we read this portion this week. The same week we read this, we celebrate the life of Charles Cohn, who shared so many Jewish family memories with all of you, a story that is shared with so many families around the Seder table each year. We begin our service with the Psalms, with words of the Psalms, which give us comfort in our times of grief and in times of sorrow. I lift my eyes to the mountains, and what is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is our guardian. God is our protection. And God is always at our right hand. The sun will not strike us by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard us from all harm. God will guard our soul, our goings and our comings, now and forevermore. Amen. We read in the psalmist, Adonai, Roi, Adonai is my shepherd. Adonai, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads beside me in the still waters, and restores my soul. God leads me in the right paths for the sake of God's name. And even when we are walking through the darkest shadows of the valley of death, we'll fear no evil because God is with us. God's rod and staff comfort us. God has set before us a table in the presence of all of our enemies, and God has anointed our head with oil, and our cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives, and we'll dwell in God's house forever. Adonai roi lo achsar, binot desheyar bitzeni, al mei menuchot yenachaleini. Nafshi yishovev, yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begitz al maveh, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha u'mishontecha, hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorai, dishanta b'shemen roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai. V'shavti bebeit Adonai, le'orech yamim. I'd like to invite Freddie to come and read some beautiful words in honor of her father.
I wasn't able to write lots of things, but I wanted to give you an idea of what my father was like. And as I stand here, I'm 64 years old, and I have sat in the audience of many, many services, and I never thought that I could handle today. But we all have gone through death, and I'm lucky that I'm at this age where I've just lost my first parent. It's hard, but I know with all of your support, we will all get through it. This is just a little ditty about my dad. If I could think of one word to describe my dad, he was a mensch. Even when talking to him, he would love speaking with accents, English, Texas, or French. While in the Army, his beloved California Fort Ord, the medical corps losing PVC Cohn, this operating room nurse they could not afford. A self-made man, he was without questioning 5 states he traveled to make for a family his living. Sacrificing baseball games, recitals, plays for myself and my brother, working so hard as a provider, father, and husband to do, he was so glad. Industry honors, there were countless, even magazine covers by hook or by crook. He even had the sechel and imagination to author a book. For the work done to educate his kids and to take care of his loving wife, Marian, for the certainty he'd be welcomed by God with no hesitation in heaven. Martinis were the best made by my husband Bob at our house near Lakeshore East Park, or Scotch on the Rocks, introduced by cousin Dick Kroll. He loved drinking Cutty Sark. For years residing in 3230 House in Wilmette, then to Founders Drive, he was so proud. As well as traveling with Marian, sometimes with the Blums and Coopers the world around, London, Italy, Greece, and even so far as China. His favorite port of call was Puerto Vallarta. A music lover Dad was, from Beethoven to Tony Bennett to Frank Sinatra. Always while listening, he was conducting the orchestra. Traveling the Midwest, especially Iowa City, he did enjoy. While going to dinner with Brad, the bartender recognized him and was ready with his dry Rob Roy. His great love of the Chicago skyline, obviously bigger than your standard Tudor, while visiting restaurants and questioning if they brought their sense of humor. A lifelong sports fan of both Bears and Cubs, a better show watching him than the games, as he swore at the home team flubs. So Dad, farewell, au revoir, our Wiedersehen, and as you are to be welcomed by God above, I just want you to know, with all my heart, I wish you all my love. Goodbye, Dad.
What can we know of death, we who cannot understand life? We study the seed and the cell, but the power deep within them will always elude us. Though we cannot understand, we accept life as the gift of God, yet death, as we talked about yesterday, life's twin, we face with fear. But why be afraid? Death is a haven to the weary, a relief for the sorely afflicted. We are safe in death as in life. There is no pain in death. There is only the pain of the living as they recall shared loves and as they themselves fear to die. Calm us, O God, when we cry out in fear and in our grief. Turn us anew toward life. Awaken us to the warmth of human love that speaks to us of you. We shall fear no evil as we affirm your kingdom of life. We now take these moments to think of Charles, to think of our wonderful memories of him and how he's touched our hearts and lives so much, in a moment of silence. Ose shalom bimromav, please join me. Huya ase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Ose shalom bimromav, huya ase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. katamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yisge shetulim beveit Adonai tzuri velo havlat abo. This song is from Psalm 92, which is part of our Shabbat liturgy and is translated in the following way. The righteous man shall flourish like a palm tree. He shall thrive and grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon, rooted in the house of God and in the courtyards of God. They shall bring forth fruit in their old age and in our old age. They'll be ever fresh and green, proclaiming that the Lord is just, my rock, in whom there is no wrong. And as I was singing that, I could just picture Chuck's hands conducting me as he always did the first time I ever met him. He was so wonderful, and I remember the last time I saw him and Marian in the Walgreens with my little Zev, and what a wonderful thing it was to see you and exchange hugs. If there was ever a picture or definition of righteous in the dictionary, there would be Chuck's photo right there. A week from this coming Sunday, we celebrate the birthday of the trees, which are growing and blooming in Israel on this holiday of Tu B'Shvat, and that's one of the songs that we would sing to celebrate that holiday. Chuck was like the strongest of trees. As the song indicates, Chuck brought forth fruit not only in his old age, but throughout his entire life. God's justice was proclaimed in human form in Charles, who, despite a tumultuous upbringing, somehow transcended a lack of role modeling and fatherhood and was an amazing father who loved his children, Freddie and Brad, and his grandchildren, Robby, Eliana, Michael, and David, and of course, his beloved wife, Marian, unconditionally. He never hesitated to tell them how much he loved them every time he was with them. They were truly the lights of his life. While Chuck loved his family most of all, Chicago was definitely a close second. There was not a time when he and Marian were being driven around that he wouldn't say, "Look at Chicago." He grew up on the North Side and was a proud alumni of von Steuben High School. Marian and Chuck were married 71 glorious years. They were only 19 or 20 when they were set up on a blind date by Sue Tigerman. They fell in love quickly and married at 21 in the Sovereign Hotel in Edgewater. Not only was Marian his best friend, but she was also a great tutor and a study partner for Chuck. While he was attending Roosevelt University to become a pharmacist, she worked tirelessly with him to prepare for tests on formulas, chemistry, and all the things he needed to know to become successful in his trade. Before they met, Chuck served in the Army during World War II and was stationed in California, where he worked in the operating room as a scrub nurse. He was very proud of this. His family reports that this was one of his most favorite times in his life. He was supposed to go overseas, but never made it due to a bout with appendicitis. He loved being in the OR so much that when he recovered, he requested to remain there instead of being shipped out. Chuck took pride in the fact that he had become an accomplished businessman like his grandfather, who built the first single-family home in Wicker Park in 1941. And Chuck also received many awards from associations that he worked for. He worked extremely hard as a traveling salesman, driving over 50,000 miles to provide a nice home, travel opportunities, and anything his family wanted or needed. He never said no to them. He loved his travels so much that he made a map with little red pins indicating every country they had ever been to. All the while, when they were there, he was always conducting to any music that he was hearing being played around him. His favorite places were California and Puerto Vallarta, and the California reunion with his friends is a very, very fond memory. Chuck lived life to the fullest, and his Judaism was important to him. He was super proud to be a descendant of the Kohanim, the high priests, with his last name Cohn. And he was very wonderful friends with our dear Rabbi Cohen's father, Herb. And they have such wonderful memories together and such a wonderful love for you, Rabbi. Thank you for being in their lives. He and Marian were members of Temple Jeremiah for almost 20 years. And he even celebrated a second bar mitzvah at age 83. Because in the Hebrew Bible, the normal lifespan of a person, believe it or not, is only 70 years. So if a person lives to be 83, this is like a second lifetime, and therefore truly worthy of another B'nai Mitzvah celebration. Brad has so many great memories of his father, traveling with him once he was old enough, playing catch with him, and seeing Chuck right out there rooting for him on his Little League games. Brad recalls one particular memory. On this particular occasion, when his dad picked him up for dinner when he was at Iowa, he drove him back to his apartment where his roommates were often partaking in the use of some smoky substances. When they walked in the door, it reeked. Brad remembers being totally freaked out about his dad, how he's going to react when they were walking up to his room. Would he call the cops? Would he yell at him? Instead, Chuck just replied, "I think we should open some windows up here." Chuck greatly enjoyed the stock market, and it was the only thing that could really rattle his calm and laid-back personality. He did very well overall, with no guidance or mentorship. He read the Wall Street Journal religiously, and he even delivered it to the building. Perhaps his calm demeanor was due to his love for a Rob Roy, a Cutty Sark, or even a dry gin martini, or an extra dry gin martini. He always said that Robert made the best martini ever, as Freddie just said. This Christmas, however, his martini was far from dry and actually had vermouth, very unusual for him. He was also a fickle fan of the Bears and Cubs, but who isn't, right? I mean, especially the Cubs. Chuck was a big critic of the Bears, and he would often shout out how stupid they were, saying, "Don't run up the middle!" Freddie talked about times when the family would go out to dinner, and he would often tell the server, "Did you bring your sense of humor?" when he wanted to communicate something. He loved his martinis so much that a glass is buried with him, along with his green fisherman's hat and a bottle of Cutty Sark. And he requested that this fisherman's hat never be put on the bed. While his was a life filled with fierce love for his family, it was not without regrets. He had wanted to stay in California after his time in World War II. He regretted not having bought land in Aspen, and was often hard on himself when things did not go as planned in the stock market. But at the end of the day, it all worked out for the best, because as our psalm says, he shall bring fruit in his old age. And truthfully, had any of these regrets actually come to fruition, these fruits may not have happened. And this amazing love, his greatest love, his family, are all results of those fruits. He was so intent on making their lives happy that he never ever tired of making sacrifices for them. There are many people who walk through their lives never expressing their love for their families, or maybe even doing it at the last minute, or maybe not even ever getting the opportunity to do so at all. Charles Cohn is not one of them. He always had a smile. He always focused on what he loved, his family, his life. He will always be like a tzaddik katamar, the most righteous and strongest of trees in Lebanon. We will always remember him that way. Zichrono livracha. May the memory of our beloved Charles M. Cohn always be for a blessing. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Please rise for the memorial prayer.
המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת חיים בן יוסף שלח לעולמו יסתיריהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Charles M. Cohn, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
This does conclude the services here at the chapel. The interment will continue here at the cemetery. For those of you who will be joining us, we ask that you continue on to the gravesite in your car. You can follow along behind the funeral hearse that we have out front. The following grandchildren have been asked to act as pallbearers today, and I'll ask you to come forward as I say your name. Robby Cohn, Eliana Cohn, Michael Bensdorf, and David Bensdorf. And we'll ask everyone to please rise as we escort the family, the casket, and the clergy from our chapel today.